DJ PK, and we're joined once again by Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports national college football writer. Shehan, good morning.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Are you outraged by the way this has worked out, or are you thinking, man, the college football committee just handed me like 20 stories. Everybody's going to click on all this stuff. This is awesome.
Well, first of all, I don't get paid by the click, so trust me, I don't want to write about all this boring stuff, to be honest. So, no, I mean, look, I think that the way that it was handled by the committee was ridiculous. I think that when you look at Notre Dame being 2 spots ahead of Miami heading into that final week of the conference championships, and then be flipped when absolutely nothing has changed, I think that that's absurd. And you know, they can make the case that, well, we just didn't think that they were comparable until they were right next to each other. Look, that's not how any of this works. There are multiple teams that could be in similar tiers, that could be comparable, that don't necessarily have to be right next to each other in the rankings. Now, I said it on social media, too. I think that Miami should have been ahead of Notre Dame in the first place, but the idea that it changed because BYU lost their conference championship game and was punished when, by the way, Alabama was not punished for losing their game. Again, just the whole way that it was handled to me was just absolutely insane. I think that this was by far the worst communication of any committee that we've ever had. I think that honestly, like, it's going to be very hard to make the pitch that we should continue to have these weekly rankings heading forward, which obviously I think is sort of an existential thing for the committee. But I mean, the reality is this, is that I think that it comes down to a question of almost integrity at a certain point. Did they just kind of manipulate this stuff so that they could create an entertainment product? If people start believing that, I think that a lot of this becomes at risk.
Do you think that the Big Ten's push to have, instead of one conference title game, have 3 play-in games essentially, 1 play 2 for the conference title, and 3 play 6, and 4 play 5 for 2 other berths, and they get 4 automatic berths? That feels more NFL-ish. It takes the committee out of it. It does solve the issue of these 4 and 5 team tiebreakers that we've seen in the ACC this year and the Big 12 last year. Do you think that'll happen now and we'll go to 16 or maybe even 24 teams and they'll just move the bag back again?
I think that we're very likely to go to 16 teams. I mean, for me, I really cannot get behind the idea of kind of those, sort of the play-in type game for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, I think that look at this year, actually, as a great example, right? There are 3 incredibly high-quality Big Ten teams, and that's about it. You know, nobody wants to see USC have the chance to play their way into the playoff. Nobody wants to see Iowa have a chance to play their way into the playoff, right? Like, that's not something like you can kind of, you know, if you're the SEC or the Big Ten, say, well, we're always going to have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 teams that are in contention, and a bunch of them should be considered. Well, again, last year we had 3 SEC teams make the college football playoff, and one of them was Tennessee, who got obliterated in their one game, right? So, because that's a big part of it, is that there's going to kind of be this, like, I guess, like, if we have these auto bids, we expect that 4 of them would go to the SEC, 4 of them would go to the Big Ten, and then again, it would be 6, 7, 8 of these Big Ten and SEC teams that would technically have a chance in the last week of the season. So I think that it sort of becomes a situation where, again, like, I just don't think that these conferences are consistent enough. I don't think that there's enough quality for these conferences that they should be guaranteed spots for their 4th, 5th, or 6th place team. And so for me, I mean, that's just a non-starter. I think that ultimately we're going to end up at a 5+11 system. I think we're still going to have the committee. I think that that's not something that's going to change. But again, I mean, I think they're really going to have to try to think about the way that they handle these processes.
You should have been there, DJ. I mean, I'm disappointed that I didn't get Shehan's autograph because, my gosh, he was holding court every time I went to get a drink or something. This guy's a celebrity down there. Gee, knee. Everybody knew him. Everybody wanted to talk to him, shake his hand. I got in line, but I ran out of time.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I mentioned this to you down there, right? That I've been around the Big 12 for, since 2013, essentially. And at this point, I feel like I know pretty much everybody coming through. And I'll tell you what, it was a lot of fun to get to cover specifically BYU versus Texas Tech because of all the great relationships that I have at both those places. Obviously, with the staffs and all, but also with the media. BYU obviously has such a fun contingent, and Tech again I've known for a long time. So like this is I joked with my wife, man, like this is like the Shehan Bowl out there with the amount of people I know.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. It was good to see you. I've seen you before in person, but to see everybody that was wanting to talk to you, I laughed about it, but it was obviously that's your name and have the respect of everybody, and that's cool because I'm sure you worked to earn it. It just wasn't given to you, and I always appreciate people who work hard, and you're right there at the top. One of the things that, to me, this Notre Dame opting out, I put it on like, well, we need reform, right? We need change. We need improvement, and I don't want to speak for Notre Dame or speak for the young men, and they're all thinking, oh, great, forget it, we're out of here, this sucks, we're not going to play this game. There might be some people who want to play. But I think that if a team like Notre Dame, which has the stature and the power of just about anybody, can do this, then maybe that might cause some change. So could we see some positive come from it?
Well, there's two things that I'll say to that, right? One is, look, obviously, they certainly have the right to do what they want. I don't personally love that they kind of pulled out and canceled a bowl game. And by the way, I would have loved to see them play BYU. I would have loved that for both teams to have an opportunity to have a really high-quality game to prove themselves. But, so one, I certainly don't agree with their decision or love their decision. But the other piece of it is that if you're going to do this, then, you have to do this, and granted, I want to be careful with my words because obviously I work for, one of the broadcast networks technically, but if you're going to say that there was collusion or that they were campaigning against you, then sue. I don't know. Do the thing. If you're going to do the thing, don't just kind of sit here and be like, well, we were treated very unfairly and we're not going to participate. But by the way, when the playoff is on that same network next year, we're going to obviously be trying to make it, do it, I don't know. I think that's sort of what I want to see, and maybe we're going to hear more. Pete Pivakwa, the athletic director at Notre Dame, is holding a press conference. I believe it's later today, and maybe he'll talk about some of the steps that they're willing to take. But the other thing too that I want people to understand is that don't cry too hard for little old Notre Dame as well. We got word yesterday from Ross Sellinger at Yahoo Sports that apparently Notre Dame has signed a memorandum of understanding that heading forward, starting with the next system, if they are a top 12 team, they're essentially granted an auto bid. They're essentially granted the opportunity to be in, and they would push out an additional at-large team if they were top 12. So if that had existed this year, the last at-large team in the college football playoff would have been left out in favor of Notre Dame, and ironically, it would have been Miami. So there are plenty of ways as well that they managed to stack the system in their favor as well. And so, again, my thing at the end of the day is if they, I think, certainly have the power and the stature to make something happen. But if they're going to make something happen, they're going to have to really commit to it because just opting out of a bowl game and pouting isn't going to make that happen.
I know the Big 12 commissioner has said, we want to earn it on the field. But I don't see how the Big 12 is going to be able to earn it on the field because nobody seems to want to give it to them. With BYU, it was, if you want to get in, you'd better win this game. And then sure enough, they drop, and Alabama gets blown out in pretty much the same fashion, and they don't drop at all.
Didn't Tech earn it on the field?
Tech did, but BYU as an at-large was held to a different standard.
Sure.
And so I don't know how, if the standard is going to be all over the map, that just means there is no standard. And I think it's going to be a one-bid league. And I don't really see anything changing. Do you?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things, right? One is I think that not just with BYU, but with kind of everybody left, I think that, I spoke to Chase Roberts, the great wide receiver over there before the season. And, he said basically, we get it. Alabama built up their reputation over the course of multiple years. And I think that that's going to be the case with a lot of the teams and brands in the Big 12 as well. Like, I think that, Arizona State is treated differently because they won the Big 12 and took Texas to double overtime last year. I think that Texas Tech will be seen and treated differently after this year. And I think that that's coming for BYU as well. Now, I wish that it would happen sooner. I think that should have been earned over the course of winning, going 22-4 over the course of 2 years and being a top 15 caliber program both times. But I think that there are opportunities to continue to build brand. But the thing, sort of the existential issue with the Big 12 is that there isn't the implicit credibility brands in the conference. So, for example, back in the old iteration of the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma were in the league. And frankly, it didn't really matter whether Texas or Oklahoma were all that good. If you beat them, it was considered a big deal. And that's, I think, the thing that the Big 12 is struggling with having to replace, is that, if BYU beats the crap out of TCU, but TCU has a Longhorn on their helmet, I think people talk about that differently, even though the quality of the team might not be any different. So I think that we're at the early end of them starting to develop some of those brands. Again, I think Arizona State's going to be there. I think that Texas Tech is certainly going to be there after this year, when I also think they might make a deep run in the college football playoff. And I'll say this as well, is that, speaking specifically to BYU, I think that people are going to start to look at them a little bit differently after the way they held off Penn State and after the way that we've heard they're going to infuse some money into their roster. Again, it takes time. And again, does that help the 2026 Big 12? I don't know. But the hope is that it helps the 2029 Big 12.
Is what we saw out of Texas Tech going to become regular, giving all the resources that they have?
Yeah, so the thing that's going to be interesting is obviously we started to hear to certain extents, right, that teams are per se finding ways to promise money over the salary cap to coaches, right? And that's going to be sort of the big interesting thing, is how is that stuff handled? Now, some of it is obvious in terms of, corporate partnerships and sponsorships and things like that. But, again, like, this is one place where it's going to be really interesting, is that, like, I was talking actually, I think with your producer Jay Catch over at Big 12 Championship, and one thing that we talked about is, like, in some ways it's great to be a brand like BYU because, like, you have all these obvious partnerships that you already have. Well, it's going to be interesting at Texas Tech, where, again, like, West Texas is all in on Texas Tech, but I do think that it makes it a little more complicated in terms of finding corporate partners that same way. But I do think that they're very forward thinking. That's what it is at the end of the day. They're going to find a way, I think, to be competitive. They're going to find a way to be at the top of their conference. And one thing that Joey McGuire, their coach, told me before the season is, we feel like we have everything to sell at this place, that this is this perfect place, perfect resources, great coaching staff, and the only thing that we don't have to sell are trophies. And now they've got one, and I think that that's going to be a huge deal for anybody coming into that program.
Shehan Jeyarajah joining us, CBS Sports national college football writer. In basketball, it used to be that going to Maui was the best tournament you could possibly start the college basketball season at. But it's pivoted pretty quickly to this players thing in Vegas because they're giving NIL money. And it's gone from 6 teams to 18. Apparently it's going to 32. Do you think this is going to happen in football? Some city that's based, has a big tourist economy and has an NFL dome, Atlanta, Dallas, Las Vegas, L.A. You can run down a list of places. Do you think we're going to see that putting together big marquee season opening games and essentially paying the players? Because that's what's happening in college hoops. I can't believe that some AD who's got a college basketball team isn't going to think this is going to work for football. It would work for football, wouldn't it?
Well, and actually, I'll tell you that there is a version of this happening next year. Auburn decided to move their season opener against Baylor to Atlanta, and part of it is apparently outside NIL opportunities for their players. So this is a thing that is happening already that I think will slowly continue to happen. We've had versions of this, with like sort of the Chick-fil-A kickoff type games and all this sort of stuff. I think this is a way to try to regain some relevance, I guess you'd say. But I also think that there's stuff in the nature of college basketball that's a little different than football, right? Like, at most, only a handful of teams can sacrifice one game over this, right? Like only one team, let's say, is going to Dublin, right? Like it's not necessarily something where, like you said, 32 teams are all of a sudden going to show up and, be able to bank on this one thing. Like, I just don't think that that's necessarily realistic with, frankly, the demands of playing football and holding a football game. But I mean, yeah, I do think that we're going to see maybe more of these kickoff type games that have direct, sort of player compensation aspects to them. And, for me, certainly, like, we've just gotten now to the point where finally Alabama's playing non-conference games on campuses. I think that's really cool. I really hope that we don't fully lose that in the name of money. And, and not to get on my separate soapbox, but, it is kind of disappointing, just big picture, how much of college athletics, or really athletics in general these days, is just business, right? Is just how can we maximize revenue? How can we maximize money? And it's almost like, to a certain extent, the actual sport sometimes takes a backseat to it. Because, again, you mentioned it, Maui was a really, really cool event, sort of a destination event. And, I'm curious if that sort of thing carries forward long term.
Well, having covered 4 Maui tournaments back in my newspaper days, I can tell you that was awesome. And to have a company credit card while you're there was even sweeter.
Well, I'll tell you what. I will say this, man. The fans out of Utah love to tell the rest of the Big 12 about going to Vegas. So at least this will solve that.
Yeah, there you go.
Shehan, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports national college football writer. And along with Barry Trammell, do we have the 2 most popular media members in the are these the 2 guys everybody flocks to and they both come on our show?
Well,
you overstated the line a little bit, but the reason you overstated is because there were a lot of people talking to him.
There were. I saw him multiple times. Trammell is well known, too. He's a character.
Yeah.
I saw him at Big 12 Media Days. A lot of people talking to him. They know he's older. He's got that white hair.
Yeah, he's
funny as all get out.
He's got that drawl.
Yeah.
He can say the most cutting, biting stuff in the nicest way.
Right. And so
as we often hear on the show.
He stands out because of his longevity and the hair. I think it's probably been white for 30 years. And he's got a lot of stuff going for him. And obviously, if you're in the business that long, and he still goes to games. He just doesn't sit around. I mean, he's still out there. Shehan's a little on the younger side compared to Barry, but probably, I would think so.
DJ PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.